$3 billion is the counterpart funding being committed to routine immunization in Nigeria, which is targeted at states with very low immunization coverage for the next 10 years. The intervention, which is targeted at reducing preventable killer diseases amongst children in Nigeria, will be financed by the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization. It requires the Nigerian government to contribute $2 billion to the $1 billion that the development partners are making available to finance the project.
Nigeria's primary healthcare system has relied heavily on donor funding in the last 1.5 decades since the federal government signed an agreement with the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization, GAVI, in 2001. However, when GAVI announced its plans to withdraw its funding 2 years ago, the debate about how to sustain routine immunization in Nigeria became a major concern. Nevertheless, GAVI's decision to extend its immunization funding till 2028 has brought some relief to the government. GAVI is investing $1 billion for immunization in the next 1 decade, just as the federal government is also expected to contribute $2 billion as counterpart funding for this purpose. This conference in Abuja is therefore organized to develop an operational strategy for routine immunization in the next 1 decade.
We are really working very hard to ensure that GAVI's partnership and the board-approved decision in terms of additional investments in vaccines and immunization in Nigeria will go along and will be put on the right track. And what the board has really told us that we have to select the states that are the poorest with the lowest coverage in immunization and make sure that the investments go in. Obviously, a major important condition is to make sure that whenever vaccines are introduced, then Nigeria is able to sustain them.
The NC's retreat is not about the $3 million. The question is, how do we implement all the things that we have articulated in the NC's document in a way that ensures that when we leave this stage, that future generations will not come back and be having conversations about primary healthcare revitalization.
According to the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, it will require $3 billion to buy vaccines in the next 10 years to enable it to reach its target of 84% immunization coverage by the year 2028. With the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization investing $1 billion for this purpose, it is hoped that the federal and state governments will play their part in this counterpart funding arrangement by contributing the remaining $2 billion that is required.
A former Director General of the Small and Medium Scale Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Bature Umar Mazari, has been arraigned on a 27-count charge bordering on money laundering and embezzlement. The Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission dragged Mr. Mazari before an FCT High Court sitting in Apo, Abuja, for fraudulently awarding constituency projects contracts to the tune of 184.5 million naira without due process. Mr. Mazari was also accused of receiving the sum of 50 million naira on November 27, 2014, from one of the contractors and distributed part of the sum to some other persons. After the defendant pleaded not guilty to the charges read to him, his lawyer, Mahmoud Magaji, urged the court to grant the defendant bail, a request the prosecution did not challenge. After listening to both parties, the court granted the defendant bail in the sum of 50 million naira with 2 sureties, who must be in the civil service and level of director. Trial has been adjourned to the 26th of November 2018. You're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, reaching you live from Lagos. Let's quickly shift our gears now to our Abuja studios, where Markwe Ogun Yusuf is standing by to take us through. Markwe.
Hello, Gimba. It's good to see you. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onogen, has warned legal practitioners who specialize in forging documents to desist from such acts. Justice Onogen was speaking at the opening of the 2018-2019 legal year and swearing in of new senior advocates. He said some lawyers, in their desperate bid to get the prestigious rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, forged court documents to qualify for nomination for the rank. Our correspondent Amaka Okafo reports.
The arrival of the justices of the Supreme Court signaled the commencement of the 2018-2019 legal year and swearing in of new senior advocates. In attendance are members of the bar and the bench, retired jurists, legal practitioners, governors and politicians. First was the swearing in of the new senior advocates by the Chief Justice of Nigeria.
I will, above that, uphold the dignity of the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria. So help me God.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria expressed disappointment at lawyers who forged documents in their bid to become Senior Advocates of Nigeria.
In the just concluded exercise, some applicants were found to have engaged in dishonorable conduct, such as forgery of judgments, resulting in their being reported to the police for investigation and possible prosecution. We have to know that if one is not for any reason qualified to wear silk as a judicial officer, he cannot wear it as a Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
On their path, both the Attorney General of the Federation and the President of the Nigerian Bar Association urged the judiciary to be vigilant, especially as the new legal year will be inundated with political cases.
I trust that in this endeavor, our cause shall continue to dispense justice in fair, firm, and courageous manner in the overall national interest.
The bar, and indeed the Nigerian nation, expects your lordships to maintain in the coming national election season the standards of decorum, professionalism, discipline, and integrity. Any judicial officer that is found wanting in that regard, we respectfully posit, must be swiftly and decisively punished and routed out from the pack of judicial officers.
A total of 30 senior advocates of Nigeria were sworn in. Ambaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
And the federal government is asking Interpol to consider Abuja for its proposed strategic study center. The request was made by the permanent secretary in the office of the Secretary to the Government, Mr. Olusegun Adekunle, at an Interpol conference on coordination and intelligence against human trafficking and smuggling of migrants. The conference has been held in collaboration with the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
The Interpol Global Conference is an annual forum.
More than 500 experts from law enforcement, public and private sectors, non-governmental and international organizations, drawn from about 70 countries, have converged on Abuja to find lasting solution to the increasing cases of human trafficking and people smuggling. It is the 6th Interpol Conference on Human Trafficking and Migrant Smuggling, being held in collaboration with the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, Nigeria Immigration Service, and the Nigeria Police Force.
The Nigeria Police have been at the forefront in the fight against this menace, and its commitment is demonstrated in collaborative efforts with the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, and the Immigration Service.
Our worldwide network of NCBs and regional bureaus and global policing capabilities stand ready and are being used to help make a difference in support of your countries.
According to NAPTIP, in the past 5 years, there has been a steady increase in the number of human trafficking cases in the country, with 641 traffickers apprehended in 2017 alone. That probably explains why the federal government wants the proposed Interpol Strategic Studies Center to be located in Nigeria.
Mr. Secretary General, I seize this opportunity to request Interpol to consider Abuja, Nigeria as the appropriate location for its proposed Strategic Studies Center as you plan to establish one.
trafficking in human beings remains a prominent challenge for law enforcement.
So what is required is a strong cooperation amongst law enforcement across the continents. And what's also required is a strong cooperation, for instance, with the private sector, with NGOs, or with many organizations that tries to help rescuing victims and getting the criminals behind bars.
We're hoping that going forward we'll be having better collaboration, better synergy in the fight against human trafficking and smuggling of persons.
As a global neutral platform for the exchange of police information, Interpol gives police real-time access to criminal databases. Far-reaching decisions that will help in the fight against human trafficking and people smuggling are expected to be made during the conference. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
The National Association of Nigerian Traders is protesting what it calls the tax on Nigerian traders in Ghana. The protesters today partially paralyzed activities at the ECOWAS Secretariat in Abuja. The president of the association, Barrister Ken Okaoha, explained that the association is protesting the alleged victimization of Nigerian businessmen in Ghana. According to him, the situation has become so bad that a law was recently passed by the Ghanaian parliament seeking to make the business environment hostile to foreign investors. He said the association is giving the commission a one-week ultimatum to intervene in the matter.
Nigerians living and doing business in Ghana have been persistently, continuously molested. Many of them intimidated, harassed, their businesses liquidated, shops closed down. As we speak now, over 400 shops belonging to Nigerians are under lock and key by Ghanaian authorities. And what is the reason, we are asking? The reason is that they are saying that Nigerians come there and take over their businesses. And we not tell them they lazy. We not tell them they sign ECOWAS treaty. Exactly. That brought every country in ECOWAS, all the 15 countries together as one entity.
Despite the build-up to the 2019 general elections, River State Governor Nyesom Wike is giving assurances that his administration will not lose focus on completing all projects in scheduled time. The governor disclosed this during the inspection of work at the judges' quarters and the Mile 1 market, expected to cater for the needs of hundreds of traders in the state. Governor Wike is also hopeful that the quality of work will not be compromised.
Again, we have come to the market and I've spoken to the contractors. They've also assured us that by December we will commission this market. Like I said, these are projects we think are very important to touch on the lives of our people. You can see how the traders on the road, how happy they are. Because at the end of the day, we're going to move them out of the road to inside the market. So we believe that the contractors will keep to their promises by making sure that December will come back here to commission this project. But we're happy with the quality of work we are seeing. It's quite commendable.